Samantha's hands trembled as she held her newborns for the first time. 3 tiny faces stared back at her, warm skin, dark curls, and beautiful brown eyes. She should have been overwhelmed with joy. Instead, her heart raced in fear. She could already hear the whispering, already feel the storm building. Her husband Daniel stood at the corner of the hospital room, frozen. These can't be mine," he muttered. Samantha's eyes widened. "What are you talking about, Daniel?" He looked away, jaw clenched. "They're black." It was as if someone had cut the air in half. Samantha's joy collapsed. She had no words, only a tightness in her chest, growing stronger with every second. She tried to explain, tried to speak, but Daniel didn't wait. He left the room, slammed the door, and didn't return that night. Or the next. 2 days later, she was discharged. But Daniel wasn't there. Instead, she came home to her suitcase outside the door, rain soaking through it. A note was taped to the handle. "I can't raise kids that aren't mine." That was it. No conversation, no DNA test, just rejection. Samantha's mother begged her to come back home, but Samantha refused. She didn't want her boys to grow up around whispers, around people who'd ask questions with cruel intentions. She packed her things, carried her babies in their tiny carriers, and got on a bus going anywhere but there. She landed in a small town 2 states over. A woman named Gloria owned a small daycare and was looking for help. Gloria didn't ask questions. She just saw a mother who needed a lifeline. Samantha started cleaning floors and feeding other people's children while carrying her own strapped to her chest. It wasn't easy. The twins cried every night. Samantha cried harder. She didn't have enough food some days. She sold her wedding ring just to pay for formula. But every time one of her boys smiled, she found strength. She named them Elijah, Micah, and Isaiah. "You're going to change the world," she'd whisper to them. "One day they'll regret leaving us." Time passed. The boys grew fast, smart, kind, and full of life. Samantha worked harder than she ever thought possible. She studied at night to finish her degree online. She volunteered at the community center. By year 3, she had a full-time job as a teacher's assistant. By year 5, she became the youth coordinator for the local church. People loved her, not because she was perfect, but because she never gave up. The town began to love the boys too, always dressed neat, polite, excelling in school. Samantha had created a world from scratch, brick by painful brick. But deep down, something in her still ached. She never forgot Daniel. Never forgot the way he looked at the babies like they were strangers. She never got closure, never got justice. Until one day, 10 years later, she got a message. A reporter from her hometown had been digging into a human interest piece and found her name. The message was simple. "I think you deserve to know what your ex-husband just did." Samantha stared at the screen. Her heart beat faster. Part of her wanted to delete it, forget it, move on. But curiosity clawed at her. She opened the article, and what she saw made her drop her phone. The headline read, "Local businessman launches charity to support abandoned children." The face in the photo, Daniel. He stood there, arms crossed, beaming proudly beside a banner that read, "Every child deserves a father." Samantha's hands balled into fists. Her throat burned with disbelief. 10 years ago, this man abandoned his own children without hesitation. Now, he was the face of a foundation pretending to care. She scrolled further. The article praised Daniel for overcoming personal struggles and highlighted his spiritual transformation after a divorce that left him broken. It told of how he found peace and now devotes his life to giving children a second chance. There was no mention of Samantha, No mention of triplets, no mention of the pain, just a polished lie wrapped in a suit and a smile. Samantha sat silently for hours that night. Her sons were doing homework across the room, completely unaware of the storm that had just cracked open their mother's past. She debated telling them, debated confronting Daniel. But what would that change? Would it undo the nights she cried alone, begging for milk money? Would it erase the diapers she changed with shaking hands, or the exhaustion of working 2 jobs without a single complaint? Number she had moved on. She had survived. But the story wasn't over. The next morning, Samantha received another message. This time it wasn't from a reporter. It was from Daniel's assistant. Mr. Lawson would like to meet with you privately. He believes it's time you two had a real conversation. At first, she laughed. Real conversation? After a decade? After silence, rejection, and blame? But then she remembered something. Her boys. Elijah had recently asked why they didn't have a father. Micah had drawn a family tree at school and left one side empty. Isaiah had once whispered, "Did he not want us?" Maybe it wasn't about Daniel. Maybe it was about giving them the answers they quietly carried like invisible weights. Samantha replied, "Tell him to meet me at the community center, Saturday, noon. No cameras, no PR. Saturday came like a drumbeat. She wore the same necklace she had when she left the hospital. It reminded her of who she was before the pain. Daniel arrived late. Of course he did. When he entered the room, Samantha barely recognized him. His hair was grayer, his eyes more tired. But the guilt was still absent from his face. He sat down across from her and tried to smile. "You look good," he said. Samantha didn't blink. "Let's not pretend, Daniel. Why am I really here?" He exhaled slowly. "I know I failed you. I know I walked away. I wasn't ready. I was scared. I thought you cheated. I didn't understand how—" "You didn't ask," she interrupted. "You didn't even stay for a DNA test. You threw me and your sons away." He looked down, shame flickering for the first time. "I had a test done last year. Quietly. I still had records, photos. I was wrong." Silence. The kind that makes your heart beat louder just to fill it. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added. "I just want to know them. Please, just let me meet them." Samantha leaned forward. "You want to meet your sons after 10 years of pretending they didn't exist?" Daniel nodded, eyes moist. "Yes." She took a deep breath. "You're not going to meet them because you want it. You'll meet them when they're ready, if they ever are." Days turned into weeks, and Samantha kept Daniel's request a secret. She watched her boys carefully, observing every smile, every question, every silence. Were they ready to meet the man who had once refused to hold them? Then one evening, Elijah approached her with an old photo album. "Mom," he said softly, "who took this picture of us as babies in the hospital?" She froze. Her breath caught. That photo had Daniel's fingerprints all over it. "Your father," she said after a pause. "He was there, in the beginning." Micah looked up from his math book. "Is he still around?" "He reached out," she confessed. "Said he wanted to meet you." The room fell silent. The boys exchanged uncertain glances. "Do you want us to meet him?" Isaiah finally asked. Samantha kneeled in front of them, eyes filled with calm truth. "I want you to do what feels right in your heart. You don't owe him anything. But if you're curious, if you want answers, I'll support you." The boys whispered about it for hours. They weren't angry, just unsure. Their memories were filled with Samantha. She had been mother and father. She had been everything. But eventually, they said yes. A week later, Daniel waited nervously at the same community center. He had brought no cameras, no assistant, no excuses, just himself. When the boys walked in, he stood frozen again, just like 10 years ago. But this time, his heart didn't shut down. It cracked open. He knelt slowly. "I don't expect hugs," he said, voice trembling. "I don't expect love. But I came to say I'm sorry. And if you let me, I'd like to start over, even if it's just as a friend." The boys didn't rush to him. They didn't smile. But they didn't walk away either. Micah spoke first. "We're not little anymore." Daniel nodded. "I know, and I missed every step." Isaiah added, "She raised us without you." "I know," Daniel said, eyes on Samantha. "She's stronger than I'll ever be." Finally, Elijah asked, "Why now?" Daniel hesitated. "Because I finally realized silence doesn't erase the truth. It only delays it." There were no tears, no dramatic embraces. But there was something else, a beginning, and sometimes that's all you get. Later that night, Samantha stood by the window as her boys laughed quietly in the living room. For the first time, their questions had answers. Their hearts had space to breathe. She wasn't sure if Daniel would stay. She wasn't sure if he even could. But one thing was certain. They were no longer the abandoned. They were the chosen. By a mother who never left. By a life she rebuilt from ashes. And by the strength she never knew she had, until the world tried to break her.